they got this one guy to go, a guy called Guo Songtao. Guo Songtao was a Confucian official. He's from the same place as Zheng, from Hunan. And actually, he took the top exams and was actually one of the main, in Zheng Guofan's think tank. He was one of the first people in China to say we cannot just learn foreign things without learning the foreign system. So he's like way ahead of his time, and so that's why Li wanted him to go, to be the first ambassador of China to a foreign land. But when he went, he was ostracized by his local. He was attacked by his local the people from Hunan. They actually even wrote a poem saying that, why are you serving ghosts when you're not even serving people, and then leaving the land of your parents? So, and they even threatened to burn his house down. But then, in any case, he actually went to London. And what's interesting was because of all the kowtowing that there was all these arguments, with the previous Macartney visits to China to see Qianlong, he thought that he would have to do the same kind of kowtowing with Queen Victoria. But Queen Victoria just wanted a handshake. I was like, oh, that's weird. And then obviously he learned a lot. He actually learned. He was the first person to use the phone. His conversation was like this: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Can you hear me? And then he met Thomas Edison. He learned all these things, and then, but there's always a but. And that is, he had a really high reputation with diplomats in London. He actually set up the embassy in Washington, in Berlin, and also in Paris. Was really been held in really high regard. He was consistently attacked by a subordinate called Liu Xihong. Liu Xihong would be a similar character to the guy that was supervising the kids in America, Chen Anbin, where he just kept on criticizing every single thing that Guo Songtao would do. What were the things that Guo Songtao did that was so preposterous to a Chinese scholar? First thing, he went to look at the the deck of a ship, and it was cold. So a guy gave him a coat, an overcoat. But as a Chinese gentleman, you should rather die of hypothermia than to wear a foreigner's coat. How dare you wear a coat? So the first incident. The second incident, it was a state banquet, and then the Emperor of Brazil came in, and Guo stood up. And Liu Xihong was like, what the hell is Basi anyway? It's Brazil anyway. It's a small country. The Emperor of Brazil does not deserve a Chinese officials standing up. The third thing, probably the worst thing they ever did, he went to a concert in the Buckingham Palace and was reading the playbill. And Liu Xihong was like, how dare you read the playbill? And so of this, there was huge back and forth of arguments between Liu Xihong and Guo Songtao, and he was recalled back.
Because reading the playbill would be what?
Would be wrong, obviously.
Because you want to know more information about
about Bach? I don't know, but basically wrong. When he came back, actually there was kind of a similar. I wouldn't say the same level of uproar as when the kids left America, but the newspapers in London and in Paris were saying, one day China would realize that this guy is more talented than they could ever imagine. And what's interesting is Guo went back and he was again vilified extremely by the local, from his own home in Hunan and also in general by the Confucian scholars. And actually when he died, he actually wrote a poem about himself. He was like, I'm sure people would know of this guy, referring to himself, in the future someday. And I think it made us, it's true. And he's one of the best thinkers. He was one of the first guys who realized that you can't really, we can't really have all these. It's actually back to the New York Times article. It's you cannot really just learn the material forms of industry without learning the system. And I think that's definitely the debate in the post-1895, after the Sino-Japanese War. That's the huge thing. But what's really sad about China is you need to get kicked in the face to change. Why go on a diet now when you can go on a diet after you have a heart attack? It's China consistently in modern history, consistently heart attacks, and then realize that to change the lifestyle. And so that's the Magari incident. And then in 1884, there was an incident in Korea, which I'm not going to talk about because that's a direct it's a direct link up to the Sino-Japanese War. I'll talk about that next time. But basically, Korea was a vassal state of China, and there was basically was divided into two camps. One was pro-Japanese, one was pro-Chinese. And the pro-Japanese tried to take power, but then was put down by China. And the person that came up, there was a young military officer that was in Korea at the time that did very well in putting down that rebellion that was supported by the Japanese, and he would be the first president of China. It would be Yuan Shikai. He first earned his first laurels in Korea, and then last but not least, this is probably the biggest, the elephant of the period, and that was the Sino-French War in 1884. Again, with these wars, it's either about religion or about vassal states. Vietnam and Korea are the two most loyal vassal states of China. Vietnam, Indochina was obviously, especially the southern parts, were taken over by the French in the 1860s, 1870s. And then they were trying to go take the whole of Vietnam and went to conflict with a guy called Liu Yongfu. Liu Yongfu he was part of the Black Banner army. And actually, the local Hong Kong people would know the Black Banner. The person who trained the Black Banner people kung fu would be Wang Fei Hong. Wang Fei Hong. I don't know if you know that. There's a series. Apparently, it's the most movies made by one person. There were like 50 of them.
The books, the very popular books as well. The guy wrote the whole series about kung fu.
No. It's different. This is like Wang Fei Hong. Wang Fei Hong. Anyway. Jet Li played him before. Yeah, Jet Li played him before. Yeah, and anyway, so so there was a conflict, and when there was a conflict, there was the French tried to solve it diplomatically, which is what they wanted was that Vietnam would not be a vassal state of the Qing Dynasty, and then the Qing Dynasty would recognize Vietnam as a colony of the French, and so they were negotiating with Li Hongzhang in the Beiyang. So you think of it as with Prince Gong in the Foreign Office, with Li Hongzhang in the Beiyang, and also with the successor of Guo Songtao, the guy called another Zhang. He's the Zhang Guofan's son, Zheng Jizhe. So he was the ambassador in Paris. And what's interesting is all three of them were saying completely different things. Gong said, go talk to Li and Zhang. Zhang said, go talk to Gong and Li. Li says, go to Gong and Zhang. And then Zhang was substantially what's a lot harder to deal with than Gong and Li. And the French thought that, it's because the Chinese were playing us. What the French did not recognize was that it's because internally, China did not have one opinion about what to do. Gong and Li did not want to fight. You don't fight the French without some kind of 1860 burning of some of the palace happen again. Zhang was part of the old guard, the Qingliu, the opinion, the high morality. Because in Chinese culture, peace treaty implies that you're a traitor. So it's always the pro-war people is on a higher moral ground than a pro-peace, always. But then usually the pro-war people, especially in this period, they're not actually the people who actually have to deal with the foreigners. So another guy would be Wang Tonghe. Wang Tonghe would be he's the teacher of Tongzhi and Guangxu, the two emperors, the two young emperors. He would definitely be in the old guard, where he's never really dealt with any foreigners before, and so because of this, there was the French thought that the Chinese were gaming them, were playing them, but actually it was because there was a huge fight between the two camps, the pro-war and the pro-peace camp. And then Li actually wrote a draft document, treaty called Li Fu Treaty, where that's exactly the same as the French demands, which is that Vietnam would not be a vassal state of the Qing, and they would recognize the colonial status of Vietnam under the French. And so they signed it. The French army went towards the border to take over the defense from the Black Banner. The Black Banner had absolutely no idea what he was talking about and started fighting. And so actually the French actually never recognized this as a war because it was never really it was basically a conflict. Then the French sent their army into the navy to Maui and Taiwan. So they invaded Taiwan and also Fujian, and they within 1 hour destroyed the whole of the Maui, the Fujian fleet, all 11 of them. And then also during that conflict, 6 of the kids who've been to America, 6 of them fought the war, 4 of them died. 4 of them through MIT, from MIT. So talent died. And they tried to invade Taiwan. And when they tried to invade Taiwan, Li Hongzhang had one of his, the guy that I mentioned before, Liu Mingchuan, one of his Huai generals to defend Taiwan against the French. And he knew that there's no way of fighting the French Navy. But it's, as probably everybody knows, actually fighting hand-to-hand combat with the French is always a really good deal. They surrender really quickly. And so they went inland in Taiwan, and the French invaded from Danshui, ambushed the French, and the French surrendered. And then the French invaded from Vietnam to a place called Zhennanguan, and the Black Banner actually fought off the French. So actually, Chinese actually won. But when that happened, this is where one of the biggest debates in Chinese history would happen. It was also between General Chou and Li. Li, as soon as that happened, quickly confirmed this peace treaty. Zuo Zongtang was like, General Chou was like, why not continue fighting? We're winning. And then so that's why General Chou was really angry and said, fighting 10 French generals is easier than dealing with one Li Hongzhang. So, but then, if you argue, it's simple to argue, but I would tend to go with Li Hongzhang in terms of quickly signing peace. It's one of the treaties where the Chinese did not have to give up land or money. So, I would if you look subsequently study history in general, it makes sense to end the war then. But actually, it was because of that. That's why Prince Gong, when the Taiwan war was not going well, Prince Gong was actually taken down by the Empress Dowager, and from then on, Prince Gong had very little power. He was kicked out from the central cabinet, and if you in local Chinese, there are a lot of movies about that Prince Gong and the Empress Dowager were actually lovers, and so even when Empress Dowager were doing all these mean things to him, he was willing to give up. And to add into the spice of things. If you actually study history, it's definitely not the case. It's most likely is because, and you can see that, and that's why you could see the wisdom of the Empress Dowager as a politician, and that is Prince Gong labeled himself. He was obviously an open-minded, westernized official. And I think throughout the years, from in 1661 to 84, he made a lot of enemies. The Warrens of the world, the Wong Tonghes of the world, and basically the Confucian. Empress Dowager, from time to time, supported, let's say, the building of railroads, supported Li Hongzhang's, supported Ding Richang's proposal to build a fleet. And when people were calling Ding a slave of the ghosts, Cixi actually said, "You know what? I understand you. You might be attacked, but I understand your position. I'm sympathetic with you." So you can see that the Empress Dowager, she was not as close-minded as what people would then label her as, and also she is much more willing to be modernized. But then a very important thing is she never had herself labeled. That's why she was able to move Prince Gong like that. And obviously, in the same period, in 1874, it didn't really matter in some sense, but it kind of does. Tongzhi died. So the Empress Dowager's son died at 19. A lot of people thought it was syphilis, but again, you can't disprove it but then you can't really prove it. So because actually leaving, supposedly he went to brothels really often and got syphilis and died. But the Hans tend to like to vilify Manchurian emperors, calling mothers with the son or with the uncle, and then the son died of syphilis and that kind of stuff. So, but anyway, he died at 19, and then the Empress Dowager got her sister's son, and also a cousin. This is probably so that it's not as confusing. So Xianfeng and the Empress Dowager Qisi had 同治. Prince Gong and there's Prince Chun had married Empress Dowager's sister and gave birth to Guangxu. So she got him. It was like kind of like a double nephew, right? Both from the mother's side and like from his sister's side and from his from a brother-in-law side to be the next emperor. It's actually shouldn't be allowed because the Qing Dynasty, you should actually go down one generation, but Cixi had quite a bit of influence in that process. And from then on, that's why she started using Prince Chun to take over Prince Gong. And Prince Chun would be a key figure in the Sino-Japanese War that I would be talking about next time.
Did Prince Gong have any children?
Prince Gong, yeah. Prince Gong, yeah. A ton. So...
Was she just completely dismissed?
Of course, because then he would be way too powerful. Prince Chun he's very smart guy. He's smart in the sense that you have no idea what he's thinking or what position is at the whole time. When he was dying, he told his other son and another Prince Chun, because he took his title, to memorize this poem in Chinese, and that is, money is dangerous, power is dangerous. When your descendants have money, they think that they're powerful. When they're powerful, they think that they're all that. And when that happens, that's when you're close to disaster. And Prince Chun had to memorize that. Prince Chun's son would be Puyi, the last emperor. So this is the family line. So this is the period. This is the modernization period. Militarily, we kind of beat the Russians and the French. There's a modernization. Granted, it's not enough, and all the shortcomings and everything will be amalgamated in the Sino-Japanese War, and that's for next time. Yeah.
So Prince Shun, up until this point, what has he been doing? He's been in this.
Well, he's been in the he's been in the political structure, but then Prince Gong is his older brother and more talented. So when basically Cixi moved Prince Gong and raised up Chun. And I think this is a very important thing in the, if you have to understand the DNA of every regime, you realize a few things. When I talk about the Song and the Ming Dynasty, none of the imperial brothers or nephews were part of the political process, right? But in the Qing Dynasty, it was. Like, so because of Nohachi, because the early Qing emperors, before they invaded the rest of China, when they were still in Manchuria, they used a lot of his sons and nephews. And so that's why the 8 banners, each banner was actually, or one of the 2 banners, or sometimes 1 banner or 2 banners were actually by the brothers. And if you look at all of the early Qing Dynasty, from 1644 to like up until Qianlong, like 1800, you realize that all the political struggles were the emperors trying to take power from the Manchurian imperial aristocracy. So, for example, that's why they created this Junji Chu, Yongzheng created Junji Chu in the 1720s, basically to kick out or try to kick out the political influence of his brothers, and he killed a lot of his brothers because of that. But by Xianfeng's death, Cixi, because the emperors were so young, she needed to go back to the kind of the early Qing political DNA of including the brothers or the uncles of the emperors in order to create the stability in the regime. That's why if she wanted to move Prince Gong away, she must raise up Prince Chun. And next few times I'll talk about, because Gong and Chun both died, and because Li Hongzhang was kicked out in the post-Japanese War, that's why there was a huge political vacuum, which directly led to the Boxer Rebellion. If all the infrastructure were in place, the Boxer Rebellion could have been avoided. But that's for the next second, third time, or something like that, yeah.